Hey everybody, welcome to Automation Tech Talk lunchtime live stream. I hope you guys are all doing well. I do have the comments up. If you have any problems hearing me or seeing me, let me know. But in any case, I'm coming to you actually from my office today. I figured I'd just do the live stream here. And I'm using a headset I hadn't used in a while. It seems to be working great, but let me know if it's not. Um, what we're going to show today is I saw some great pictures of some HMI screens, SCADA screens on LinkedIn from a gentleman named Jimmy Triangula, and I thought it was just so great. I'm like, Jimmy, you're gonna come on the lunchtime show, and we're gonna share this with everybody. And so, let me go ahead and bring him in. Jimmy, thank you for joining me today. How you doing?
I'm doing just fine. Thanks for having me on. I'm really excited to be a part of the show. I've read many of your articles. I've seen your YouTube videos. Everybody in controls knows who you are. So I was pretty excited when you asked me to be on the show. Thanks a lot for having me.
Well, thank you for the kind words. I run into people all the time in controls who do not know who I am. So,
Really?
but hopefully over time, more, I get out there more and more people, and get to meet more people too. I got a trade show coming up in a couple weeks I'm going to, but I want to get back to you since this is the first time you've come on the show. Could you
Yeah.
do like a quick introduction, introduce yourself, introduce your company, tell us kind of like some of your experience and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Jimmy DiTraglia. I live just outside of Greenville, South Carolina. I've been doing industrial automation and controls as a controls engineer for about 14 years now. I've worked in many different industries. I started out in food and beverage and a little bit of natural gas processing. I've done some other chemical process stuff. And what I've done mostly in the recent years has been more on the material handling side, a lot of conveyors and packaging, robotics, assembly, things like that. I like all of it, but the latter I feel is a little more exciting because you get to see more of the action taking place. You know, when you're doing process skids, all that stuff kind of happens behind tanks and pipes and whatnot, and you know it's happening because you hear motors turn on, you hear valves open, and all that stuff's fun too. But for me, it's just a lot more exciting to see so much of the action taking place when you're looking at conveyors and you're seeing robots pick and place things and stuff like that. So I started JD Controls LLC in June of 24. So I guess we're about 16 months into this venture. And I did that as a result of, unfortunately, the company I was working for went out of business. And at that time, I was doing a lot of interviewing, as we all kind of knew that it was coming. Didn't quite find what I wanted. The company eventually closed its doors, so we were all laid off. And I put a post on LinkedIn about it, and I mentioned that unfortunately Infinity Robotics had gone out of business, and so I'm looking for work. And I said I have not yet found where I want to go full time, but I'm willing to pick up some contract work just to stay busy. If anybody's interested, please call me, email me, whatever.
Sure.
And I got a lot of response to that. And like literally 4 days, I think it was like 4 or 5 days after making that post, I was contracted to design an HMI for a guy that runs a machine shop up in Iowa. So, and then I had a few other people, like I was already having conversations about quoting more work. And I thought, well, you know what, maybe I'll just try to open up an LLC and see where this goes. I'll be a one-man system integrator and I'll see where this eventually takes me. And I've been really busy since then. It's been a lot of up and downs. I've learned a lot about running a business, things you have to know outside of the controls engineering, technical skill set. It's been quite an opportunity, but I'm really enjoying it, and I'm hoping to keep this going. I really like doing my job this way, and I'm hoping to keep growing and keep getting busier.
Yeah, now let's talk about some of your past experience before we jump into what kind of brought us here today, which is
Mhm.
what you're working on now as a kind of a side project. Um, what kind of PLCs, HMIs, SCADA? What kind of VFDs? What is your history? What kind of products have you used?
Yeah. So just like every, I say every, I'd say probably 90% or more of the controls engineers in America, the majority of the work I've done has been Rockwell Automation.
Okay.
Rockwell's king here. Everybody knows it. It'd be really hard to succeed as a controls engineer if you don't know all the Rockwell platforms. So I've done lots of programming in Studio 5000. I've developed lots of HMIs using Factory Talk. I've used Plant Packs quite a bit, which was some of the inspiration for this WinTech project that we're going to get into. So I know all of the Rockwell lines of VFDs, kinetic servo drives. I know those very, very well. I know View Designer, which is Rockwell's newer HMI software for the Panel V5000s, which I'm quite a fan of. I think they did a very good job with that. Also, I've got experience with Ignition. I've done a few projects using Ignition. I know Emerson, which was formerly GE, Emerson Pack Machine Edition. I've worked on a long project doing a lot of programming using Pack Machine Edition. Did a little bit of HMI design in Emerson's Simplicity platform, which again was formerly GE. Now Emerson owns them. Did a lot of that recently. I've also done some work using Beckhoff's platforms a little bit, and I've gotten really heavy into CODESYS recently.
Okay, great. If anybody's listening, if you know somebody from Emerson, we've tried to get their pack people on, but I just don't know who to reach out to. So they're like one of the major players we've never been able to touch base with. We've had great success with the good folks at Siemens, Rockwell, Schneider. Whenever I do this, I always like kick myself in the rear, and now I got to say everybody. Opto 22, Horner Automation. Just go to the list of people on the podcast. You'll see everybody we've had on there. And I want to just shout out to all those vendors. Thank you for all your support over the years. But that's one. Like I want to cover everybody. It's like if you're doing a racing magazine, you want to cover all the people who make race cars. Well, I'm doing automation. I want to cover everybody, and that's one. So if anybody's watching or listening, if you know the contact over there, let me know about that. But with that said, let me switch views here, and let me find the magic button here. We are using StreamYard today, which I think works best for these type of shows. And I'm going to put this full screen so I can see the graphics. You guys can see I'm sitting quite a ways away from the monitor. And so tell us about the whole, this current project. You've been posting about it a lot on LinkedIn, and the graphics just used beautiful. But tell us a little bit about what got you started with this.
All right. So the whole idea behind this was that as I got into working for myself and trying to offer something that makes me, I guess, stand out a little bit from every other system integrator, was I wanted to be able to offer something that was good quality, but also at a much more budget-friendly price point for maybe some of your smaller automation projects that just don't have the justification or the budget for the really, really expensive hardware and software. Now, I'm not knocking Rockwell Automation. They're obviously a great company, or they wouldn't have so much market share in the United States. But not every project really has the need to pay that kind of money for hardware and software. And so there are much more budget-friendly solutions out there, but they have a lot of limitations, and they lack some features that some of the bigger players have. And so I wanted to just try to put the effort into developing something that looks and feels like the big guys, but it's not gonna kill the budget. And so I did some exploring, and I knew of CODESYS being more and more popular because it's a free download. The end user pays the licensing for a runtime on their machine, but you can download it and run it and develop code and test and run it and have a runtime on your computer for free. You just have to keep resetting the trial period. It's real simple. So it's starting to grow in popularity for a lot of reasons, because it doesn't cost me a lot of money to do the development with it, right? So it's an attractive option for me. What Wintec specifically released was they have an HMI that can serve as a soft PLC that is programmed using CODESYS. You just have to pay $99 to activate CODESYS on that HMI. And then the HMI itself has RJ45 ports, and it has a serial port for connecting to remote I/O, drives, servos, another PLC, whatever you need, because CODESYS, just about every protocol you can think of, you can set up communication for it in CODESYS.
All right, I got a question. So
yeah,
and I know you're not from Wintec, or is it WeTech? You're not from WeTech.
I think it's one of those things, kind of like FANUC, where people pronounce it differently depending on what part of the country they're from. Because I've heard people pronounce it a bunch of different ways, so I'm not sure exactly what the official pronunciation. I used to call it WineTech because that's the way that it kind of read to me. But then when I talked to them on the phone, and they're up in the Pacific Northwest, they said Wintec. So I just started saying Wintec because I figured they know best, but that might be a dialect from where they're from, right?
Yeah, and it's kind of like Balif. I always call them Palif, but when I talk to them, actually talk to somebody there, they call it Baloof, and I'm like,
Baloof. I've never heard that one.
Do I now say Baloof, or do I stay with Balif? But anyway,
I think it's kind of like FANUC. There's like 4 different ways I've heard people say FANUC robot.
FANUC.
Yeah.
FANUC. All right. So you're not with Wintec, right?
No.
I want to ask you a question on this HMI. So you buy this HMI. Let's say you don't buy the $99 soft PLC option. Do you still program it with the CODESYS HMI,
Oh, so this
or
is
does it have its own HMI
yeah. So
function?
what you're looking at is not is not the CODESYS HMI.
Okay.
They call it a visualization. That's not CODESYS.
Yes. Okay.
This
So it
is
has its own
Windset's
HMI developer.
HMI software. It's called Easy Builder Pro, and it
Oh,
is also a free download. It's a free download, free activation. It just runs on the HMI, and then inside that software, in that configuration, you have to set up your communication to a PLC. So I have done these where they communicate to a compact Logix, and
okay.
communication is pretty easy to get it set up. They've got couple hundred, maybe a few hundred drivers for different PLCs, different communication protocols to get your data in there. So that way you can get all your tags and link that to HMI objects.
Okay, great. Yeah. So I just wanted to be clear on that, because what I found is usually if you have HMI programming software from the HMI company, it's usually more feature rich than what you get with the CODESYS visualization. Not to say
Yeah.
that CODESYS visualization isn't powerful. I'm just saying that ease of use wise, HMI companies typically give you an easy to use package that's quicker and easier to develop. But
Yep.
that's just my own personal opinion. But let me turn it back to you. Go ahead.
Yeah. So what I developed was I thought I want to develop something really good, as I've got some free time to kind of tinker around with this, because I wanted to get better at programming in CODESYS anyway. So it was going to accomplish that goal. And the folks at Windset were kind enough to let me borrow a demo unit HMI that I've had for several months now. I've had it here for quite some time as I've been developing this. And I wanted to develop something that was kind of like a hodgepodge of a little bit of the features of plant packs that I really, really liked.
Mhm.
And also some things that I've just either done or seen on other projects that I really liked. And I kind of just meshed it all together. Right. That's kind of what I put together. And I went through several revisions of changing the graphics, changing the way the layouts look, changing fonts and colors to try to make it look, prettier, I guess, without overdoing it. I don't like too much color on an HMI. And one of the main challenges that I had to overcome was that in Easy Builder Pro, there's not a native method. I don't say native. I meant to say maybe I'm drawing a blank right now for the term I'm looking for, but there's not a method right there inside that software to create what we would consider like a parameterized pop-up, like we would do in factory top
Yes.
view,
Yep.
or we would do an ignition or anything like that. Now there is one way to do it where they have like you can look at like index registers for different instances of a UDT, but it gets really messy. And I did that one time and it did work, but and I did that with communicating with a Rockwell with a compact Logix, but I knew that there had to be a better way to do this. It's like there has to be a less messy way to accomplish this. And that's when I really started tearing into some creativity within CODESYS to try to get it to work. And what I ended up doing is creating function blocks in CODESYS for each device type, similar to like your plant packs AOI. But then I also created for every single device type, I've got another function block that I created for that device type's pop-up. And then there's a lot of other magic behind the scenes that I'm kind of keeping as proprietary because I spent a lot of time on it to get all the right data, all the inputs, all the outputs, everything, get all that mapped into that instance of the pop-up as you request it for that device. And it works. It just took a lot of trial and error.
Now, because these blocks you've built are inside of CODESYS, they could be used with any HMI. It doesn't just have to be a WayneTech, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So,
Yeah,
now you just have to point to those tags and you're good to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so what I've got now is the HMI application. I can take a template of an object for a VFD or an actuator or a valve or an analog transmitter, whatever it is, drop that on the HMI application, search and replace the tag name, just like you would do in Factory Talk. And then that template has a button that automatically calls up a pop-up that is the pop-up for that particular data type. And all the right data for that instance of that data type is mapped into that pop-up. So your alarm set points, your manual start, stop, open, close commands, faulted, alarm state, any of that stuff. There's a little concatenated string of tag name and description that goes on the pop-up header. All that stuff is handled inside CODESYS. It's mapped correctly to the pop-up as you request it.
Yeah, and I
And,
think we should
and I
show them
tried to
some of you.
follow a lot of the ISA 101 guidelines, because I really am a fan of that. I'm not anti putting colors on HMIs, but I don't like an overload of color on HMIs. I don't like HMIs that have, so much different color and blinking and things contrasting with each other that you don't know where to focus your eyes. And that was kind of the whole science behind this theory of developing HMIs, is what they call the high performance HMIs, to focus the operator's attention where it needs to be, but everything else doesn't need to be distracting. So there's a lot of grayscale, a little bit of blue, and a couple other colors where you need to focus your attention. But other than that, it's very much grayscale and just a couple shades of blue.
So taking your years of Rockwell experience, using plant packs, using their high-end products, if there's somebody out there who needs you to do some CODESYS development, and they want to have some really good-looking screens, but maybe not have the high expense, they want to stay in the CODESYS ecosystem. That's something you can do. They can call you up, and I think at this point we should probably show them some of the different
And that's what I'm
development you've
hoping
done.
too.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hoping. And another thing that I noticed when and I've integrated several systems that use plant packs, and it works fantastic. I mean, these places are all making product, and they've been making product for years.
Yep.
But the thing about plant packs is that it's so huge, and I mean, these AOIs are just massive. The pop-ups are huge and convoluted, and most of the customers use about 25% of the overall offering of plant packs. So in a lot of cases, I say in a lot of cases, people are paying for a Ferrari when they just needed a Honda Civic, because you're paying a lot of money for. And now, if you have a system that needs all the functionality of plant packs, then by all means go with Rockwell, because they have a fantastic package for that. But what I saw is that most of the systems that use this, at least the ones that I integrated. Now, I'm not saying there's not a use case for people that need all that functionality, but what I was seeing is that you have operators that they open up those pop-ups for a valve, and they do nothing other than occasionally put it into manual, open it, close it again, put it back into auto, and then go back and do their process, right? So they're not using all these multiple layers of pop-ups nested within pop-ups and all these different settings. I mean, gosh, they designed it to where anything you could possibly imagine that you would want to do with a certain device type, you can do within that plant packs configuration.
Yeah, it's kind of
awesome. They put a lot of work into that, and it's really cool. But most people don't need all that. So what I did was I designed all this stuff to just basically cover all the basics, like all the things that you would absolutely for sure need if you had a discrete open or closed valve, like all the bare minimums, like you have to have this. And I designed it in such a way that if they need more, we can scale up, and it's really not that difficult for me to scale up and add a little bit more code, add a few more buttons on the pop-up, and I can customize that for the customer as they need it.
Okay, I'm going to jump in there just for a second. I don't want anybody who's watching who's not familiar with what we're talking about to have any be confused about anything. First of all, the plant packs is free, and second of all, I can understand. You're absolutely right in what you say, but I really think it's a catch-22. If you're going to develop faceplates and add-on instructions, if you have customers asking for new features, at some point they're gonna have lots of features, and is that a good thing or a bad thing? And I think overall it's probably a good thing, right? Because they've added all the features customers wanted, but like these are not things you're going to want to edit, right? So these are kind of like the off the shelf. If you want to block in a faceplate that does kind of everything, use these. But they are, I agree, they are so complicated that you're probably going to either use them stock or you're going to develop your own. Now, like you said, you've deployed them a lot. They work well, they're free. All you need is the Rockwell hardware and you can use them. But on the other side too, if you had very little memory left in your PLC or your HMI, they're not going to be a good solution because each block has its own. And again, there's commonalities, there's common add-ons inside of each AOI that all the blocks use. So they do try to do they did try to make sure they're not adding the same code over and over again, no matter how many blocks you use, right? But yeah, on the flip side, it's not something that's designed to be easily edited. Like you don't want to explode one of those faceplates and try to edit those because there's just like you said,
that would be
decades.
bad.
decades of
Yeah,
features customers have asked for have been put into that. So just
yeah.
wanted to kind of lay the groundwork there. I didn't want to I didn't want to leave anybody misled, but you had a chance to start from scratch. So
Mhm.
you're going out to your potential CODESYS customers and saying, now I have an affordable HMI that looks great, that has the primary features people actually use. Won't do everything, but it has what most people will need. And I think that's a differentiator.
Yeah, that's what I was going for is, all the basics that people are definitely going to need. And if you want to add stuff to it, like I said, it's not the way that I've built it. It's really not that difficult for me to go back and just add a few features, add some lines of code in that
Yeah.
device's function block, add some stuff on the HMI, test it, make sure it works. And then that can be like a customized version of what I've already built for that customer if they request something else, like for an analog valve, if they want to have something more than just putting it in manual and commanding it to a set point to open, if they want to have up and down arrows to bump it by 1% in either direction, I can add that on there. That's not part of the standard package, but I can add it on there, and it really isn't that difficult.
Well, let's go ahead and show your prospective customers and your peers out there who are watching what
Okay.
you've done so far. I know you showed me examples so why don't you go ahead and walk us through some of the examples you've built? I know a lot of this is work in progress because it's, as customers' needs come up, you have to address them, right? But
Yeah.
in any case, so this is your analog input, analog value. Uh, could talk
Yeah,
about this.
so I've got a couple of screens here, just the analog and discrete screen, just to kind of show uh, and one instance of each of these types
Sure.
and how they work, and then you can kind of manipulate some of the stuff, and I can show you how the stuff works. The other one is on the discrete screen. We'll get to that one in a second. So the first one here being an analog input. If you click anywhere here, you get your pop-up for this pretend system air pressure. We can enable or disable alarms from here. We can
Nice.
change set points. And then right here, I've got a raw in, like if I was actually mapping raw counts from an actual analog input channel. And if I were to change that, you see the value come up here. So we've got all this information here. You can see your EU calculated value on the display. You got your tag name, you got units. All that stuff's configurable within the device's routine. Again, just like plant packs, they have those little config tags for all sorts of things, for your counts high and low, your engineering units high and low. So all this stuff that you see here is all programmed in CODESYS, and you can change the units too. So if this was not PSI, if it was a different pressure unit, you could change that just by editing that config tag in the function block itself. If we were to go up to set an alarm, you see that we get orange here for the high or low alarms. And then we would get red if we went to a high alarm. We would get red, and then you see the state conditions of each. And then we have in the banner up here, it tells us that we have a high alarm. So I'm going to reset these so the alarms are good now. Oh, and if we had, I just want to show one more thing about that alarm. If I were to toggle this VFD alarm too, now we have like a little scroll here up on the top. It tells you what alarms are active, as well as being able to see them here.
Nice.
So I'm going to go back. I'm going to turn that off. Turn this back to a normal value. Clear this alarm. So that's analog input. Analog valve is probably the simplest one that I've made so far. There's just not a whole lot of control on there. That's like the basic stuff. But again, if you wanted to add more stuff in here, like if you wanted to add clamp values to where you could have the option to clamp it to only open up to 95% or only close to 5%, I do see stuff like that. Right now, this set point value is just my automatic set point. So if I put it to 65, you see it change to 65%, and you see the progress bar out here. If I put it in manual, you get a little indicator right here that says that this device is in manual. And then now we got the manual set point, so I can change this. We go back to 30% and go back to auto, and then that manual indicator goes away. This right here is for VFD. So this pop-up here, again, this is something that I took from plant packs that I really liked. One of the things I thought plant packs did that was great were those permissive and interlock objects that you get for each device.
Yep.
So you could open up their pop-up, and you could change the description of them, whether they're in a healthy state if they're high or low. You can do all kinds of stuff. I didn't put all that in there, but I did add the P and the I indicators here. And this is something I like that PlantPaks did too, is that when your permissives are okay, it was gray with like a black text, but then when it's not okay, it was black with that white, so it kind of popped. Yep. So this P and I out here is, again, just a checkbox to turn one permissive or one interlock on that is currently off. You can see if I turn that permissive on, the little P goes away, the I goes away, and now we're happy here. If I turn these off and I click this P, you can see that test permissive is not happy. Now it's happy. Same with interlock, test interlock. So I took that idea from PlantPaks. I thought that was a great idea, so I made sure I included that here. This set point out here, again, this is my remote or auto programmed set point for the VFD. The manual one would come from here. So this is my auto run command. If I were to toggle this on and our permissives and our interlocks are good, we start running. And just like you would expect, if you drop a permissive, you can still run. If you drop an interlock, you cannot run. So I turn the interlock, I turn the run command off. Now the interlocks are good. If I put this into manual, you get the little M right there, and then we can hold this down to jog it at 8%, which is my jog speed, and you can see that it showed up here. And then we can do manual speed. You know, I can change this to 25. You get 25% indication here. You put it back in manual. I do remember that from the PlantPaks days that they had a lot of different indications on those graphics. If you lost a permissive, you lost an interlock. If it was an auto, well, they don't call it auto. They have program and operator. I do auto manual, but they had little icons that were on there, and I knew what they meant, you know, because I was working with it so much. I knew what they meant, but I did get feedback from operators that they said they would prefer there to be either a letter or something text, because they don't like having to go remember what all these icons mean, you know. Yeah. And I have gotten that from operators before. So I recently worked on a project that I'm still a part of, that the standard for that facility was to have icons on the template, or not an icon, just one letter for P for permissive, I for interlock, you know, L if it's in local mode, stuff like that. And I thought that was a good idea. So I kind of brought that in. So that kind of goes back to what I said before. It's like, this is a hodgepodge of a lot of things I liked about PlantPaks and things that I liked about other projects that I worked on that I thought were really good. And I just brought all that into this, and this is what I developed. This right here is for a PID loop. So if I open this up, we get a trend here, and I can change this set point. And I did a lot of funky math in my simulation code to kind of simulate something that looks like a realistic response. Okay. Here, so you can see the trends changing. So right now I'm in auto. So if I were to put this back in local, now I'm changing my set point, and you can see it. You can see it respond a little bit. So now our set point is 37 psi, and you can see all the values changing here. The CV, the output. Just pretend the output's like a pressure control valve, right? If I go back to remote, it changes here. So I had to really play around with this to get it to give me a realistic response, and then I could go here and I could really increase the set point. What's really cool about this trend here is that you can move it around, and you can zoom in on it. I mean, you can really have a lot of fun with this thing. You can widen it, you can narrow it if you really want to see a lot of your history. So you can use this to help you tune a PID loop. So I thought that was a pretty neat feature that comes with EasyBuilder Pro, is this trending screen that you can add. So that's all the analog stuff. And I'll take this out of local. I'll put it back into remote control. So now the set point changes again. On the discrete side, we've got, this is real simple, just a discrete input. Proc switch, limit switch, gate switch, whatever it could be. That's just showing it on and off. Discrete valve, same kind of deal here as you saw with the VFD, where we've got a permissive object. Okay, right now our permissive is not met, but if I turn that on, our permissive is good. And this is something that I did take from PlantPaks. I thought that the colors that they used when they were showing the valve opening or closing, or a motor starting up, where it goes from gray to blue to white when it's either at full speed or it's completely open. I thought that was pretty cool. So if I put this in manual, You see the M indicator there. And if I go to open, I've got simulation code that shows it trying to open for a second or so. I think it's 1 second. If I go back to close, it goes to light blue and then back to gray. Another thing I added is I put simulation code in every single function block here, and I've got a bit that tells that function block if we're in simulation mode or not. So that way we're not going to generate errors for not seeing open and close switches and things like that. So if I go back into auto and I give it the actual auto open command, again, it'll do the same thing. It'll open, it'll close. But if we don't have permissives and I try to open it, nothing happens. Same thing for an actuator. That one works the exact same, so I'm not going to demonstrate that. It's just the exact same. And then FV&R pump. Again, permissive and interlock, same thing that you saw before. We can put it in manual and we can jog it. Oh, not until I have permissives and interlocks. We can't. Now we can jog it. And you can see the status has changed up here from running to stopped. We can start it or we can stop it. And so that's the library. That's the basic library of everything that I've created there. And so then another thing I've got, let me show you this too. This is something that I took from projects that I worked. See, these devices are both in manual. I've got a unit control that keeps track of how many devices are alarmed or in manual, and you can just go here and put everything back into auto. So that way, if you got a bunch of devices in manual because you were troubleshooting something, you don't have to go back and open up every pop-up and put it back into auto because that's just kind of annoying. Yeah. When I first started in systems integration, that was one thing I learned when I was learning to program PLCs, learning to develop HMIs at the first system integrator I worked for. That was one thing that we put on the HMIs for one of our largest customers is they wanted to have that unit control so that you could reset all your alarms and you could put every device back in auto with just one click rather than going to every device one at a time. So this right here is something I made up. This is not a very complicated process, and the point of this was not to develop some big, elaborate, complicated process because I'm not a process engineer. I'm a controls engineer. I just wanted to make a pretend batch process and kind of demonstrate how all this stuff works. So you can see here, we got one instance of the pop-up for every single device here, different limits, different scaling. Everything is all different here. And I've got valves, I've got pumps, I've got a couple of tanks. And what this is very, very simple. You've got 2 ingredients that have to make a batch of whatever kilogram amount is entered here at these percentages. And then you can hit start and you can go. Now I added, as part of this library, S88 state machine. So all the states or phases that we're all familiar with, running, paused, held, aborted, completed, idle, all those. I got that whole thing worked out. And I've got equipment modules as well, which is something I'm very familiar with from my process control days. So I've got an equipment module with a state machine control for the tank transfer in, which is everything that transfers into the tank. And then I've got one for transfer out, which is all the equipment that transfers out of the tank down here. Again, we've got permissive objects for each one. So I've got permissives here. So if I were to take this device and I were to put it in manual, it's going to go black here and it's going to say that devices and auto permissives not met. So now I come back here and fix this and now I can run. Up here, you'll see where I did use a little bit of color because I thought it was a good place to direct the operator's attention. So if you hit start, we start running. Now we got green for running. We see valve open up, pump turns on. We see level dropping out of this tank. We see level start picking up here. You can see the values here. And we've got a totalizer to totalize each ingredient per the recipe set point. And this takes a couple of minutes to do ingredient 1 and then ingredient 2, and then we can transfer it back out. So if I were to pause this, we get an orange color up here. So that's kind of good to direct the operator's attention, so they can see something a little bit different. It's been paused. And then you can resume. If we're in the middle of the process and I take one of these devices and I put it into manual, we go into held. We go into a held state, and then you can't resume. You can't restart until you meet your permissives, which says this is not an auto. So I put this back in auto, and now I can restart. If I let this run for a few minutes, it would eventually go to complete, and then I can go to the next one to complete. But we're just gonna waste time. Nobody wants to watch this thing run for 2 minutes, right? We've already seen what it does. If I hit abort, something bad happened, I needed to abort the process, you hit abort, it goes into an aborted state, and we get that magnetocolor, because again, that's something bad that we definitely want the operator to pay attention to.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can reset the process, you reset the whole state machine, go back to idle. This other tab here is for a continuous process. It's still under construction, so I'm not going to demo that one yet. Like I was saying earlier, I've spent a lot of time on this, but I've also got to do projects that I'm actually getting paid for, so I can only devote so much tinkering time. So that one is still under construction. I'm going to eventually get this one going, but it still needs a little bit of love. And this one is for conveyors, just to kind of demonstrate multiple instances of the FVNR motors for conveyor control. We got a couple of actuators that would redirect product to either go straight across the conveyor or come up at a 45-degree angle and come to this other conveyor. Mm-hmm. This one's also still under construction. I'm going to add some more stuff to it. I'm going to make these conveyor objects look a little bit prettier eventually. But anyway, we can select between lane 1, which is right here, lane 2, and lane 3. So if I could select lane 1, you see that those solenoids turn off. If I start the system and I hit this infeed PE button, that's just simulating that I put a product in the system, right? Conveyor turns on, you see that it goes to lane 1. If I was going to move it to lane 2, you see these solenoids turn on, put a product in there, and now you can see that it actually comes up to the top to go in here to lane 2, and then the count increases. So lane 3 would put it down here. So that's kind of what I built to demonstrate to everybody the functionality of this library that I've made, kind of what it does. I showed a material handling example of it, a batch control example of it. I've already showed the alarm screen. The IO-Link screen is not really related to this controls library, but it's some cool tinkering around I did with some IFM distance sensors. I made a couple of videos of that back in the day, so you may have seen that one. So that's it. I've got an indication up here for simulation mode being active. I think that about covers it.
I noticed you posted a lot of these images on LinkedIn with posts. What has the feedback been from those?
A lot of really good feedback. People really liked them. I haven't gotten anything negative. The only negative feedback that I got from somebody, it wasn't really negative. I think he was just kind of pointing something out that he didn't like, was he didn't think it was necessary to have 2 digits of precision on some of these things. He said it's just going to be too much flickering. 1 is more than enough. And so I took it as good constructive feedback, because when you have like a level transmitter and but like this one right here, 0 to 200 gallons, you don't need to know if it's 0.62 gallons or 0.64 gallons. It doesn't matter. 167.6 is enough precision, right? So if this analog device ends up being a pH sensor or something where having 2 digits of precision is important to the customer, I can always customize it. But I did change that to just be 1 digit. But everything else has been really good. A lot of people really liked what I was doing. I got a lot of good feedback on it, and I was really glad to see that. The way social media is, man. If somebody that doesn't like what you did, they're going to tell you. So you always, when you post stuff like this, you definitely open yourself up for some harsh criticism, and you have to have thick skin. And I do. Nobody's really gonna hurt my feelings if anybody was like really nasty about it, said it looks terrible, but I didn't get any of that. Everybody gave me some real good feedback. They said it all looks really good. They really like what I'm doing. And so yeah, now I'm demoing it more and more because I'm using LinkedIn as a marketing tool, trying to get it in front of a lot of people. I actually had someone reach out to me recently who works with a lot of MIT graduates who do some R&D chemical skids. And they've got these little small chemical skids. They've got these are all chemical engineers and chemists who have an idea, trying to create something, trying to do something in that world. And he reached out to me and he said, this would be perfect because these are all R&D projects. We don't have a gigantic budget. This is a perfect opportunity to use that. So I quoted it to him, and I haven't gotten a PO on it yet, but we've gone back and talked quite a bit. It seems pretty likely that I'm going to get it. So it'll be the first time that I actually get to implement this on a project, and it should come pretty soon.
Well, and I'd like to tell the audience, whether you're watching live, thank you for tuning in, or you're watching after the fact, if you like what Jimmy's working on, again, as JD Controls, He can do all this in Rockwell, like you said at the beginning.
Yeah,
He knows all the Rockwell. But if you're a CODESYS and you're like struggling, like how do I get HMIs that look like the other guys? Because when you open up CODESYS, you get this blank canvas with the visualization. Like, where do I start? Well, JD can take care of you. Jimmy can take care of you, and just let him quote your system. He'll do it for you. And you work with companies all over, even though you're located. Where are you located again?
I'm in South Carolina. I'm
South
just outside
Carolina.
of Greenville, South Carolina. From Tennessee originally, living in South Carolina now. But yeah, I can travel. That's not a big deal. The company I actually just told you about that I quoted this for is in Massachusetts.
Sure.
I don't mind traveling at all. I do it often. It's not a big deal. I don't have to stay in the Southeast for a project. I can travel anywhere you need me to be.
Yep. Yep. And so I just think it's interesting because if somebody wanted something like plant packs, but they're using the CodeSys platform, you could be a great solution for them to give them something, a turnkey system that has a
Yeah,
lot of the same functionality.
it's a really cost-friendly equivalent to that. And
Yeah.
again, if somebody really wants to just use Rockwell, I can do plant packs. I can do it pretty well. So
Yeah.
feel
Oh,
free to call me
absolutely.
for that one too. But I developed this as something to give somebody something really, really good that is really functional, but also can save you money if you're real tight on budget. And what I'd
Yeah.
seen in the past is that a lot of people, like I've seen a lot of people post about developing HMIs using WinTech, and they've always been good designs, good applications, but I've never seen anything where it's this complex, where you've got state machine control and you've got equipment module sequencers and you've got a whole library of devices and pop-ups. Like, I've never seen anybody do that. And I'm not saying that anybody else couldn't figure it out. I mean, I'm sure if somebody put the time into it, they can figure it out. But I think that what I've got here is pretty unique. And I've
And
talked to a few people at WinTech who agreed that it is pretty unique. And we've had some good conversations about trying to get me some introductions to some people, whether it's vendors, distributors, possible end users that maybe could be a source of leads for me. We've had some conversations going that route because they really like what I've done, and they want to help me get this in front of the right people.
yeah, and so a lot of times we just have buttons and lights on the HMI. So,
Yeah.
but if you need something more, I would definitely reach out to Jimmy. We don't have your link in the show right now, but my promise is to add it later today, so that anybody who's watching this, just if you're watching live, come back and check later, or if you're watching it for the first time later today, you should see it. And Jimmy, for those people who just can't wait, they got to get in touch with you now. What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
You could just send me a message right on LinkedIn. That would be just fine. You can find me on LinkedIn. Send me a message there. I've got a LinkedIn page for my business. It's JD Controls LLC. There's another company that's called JD Controls. They're a whole different thing. Mine is JD Controls LLC. That is my business page. You can contact me through there. You can find me on LinkedIn, or you can email me at jimmy@jdcontrolsllc.com, and then
Okay.
I'll respond as soon as I can.
All right. And I went large screen here so you can see the spelling of his name, Jimmy, DiTraglia. So you can see it right
Yep.
there on the screen. If you're jogging or walking or whatnot, I just spelt it out for you.
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I did everybody the favor of taking out my complicated last name on my email, so I made it easy. Just Jimmy@jdcontrols.com or jdcontrolsllc.com. So it's easy to send me an email, so you don't have to remember how to spell my last name, because I know it's not an easy one.
Well, Jimmy, I want to thank you for coming on the Automation Tech Talk Lunchtime Edition live stream. Really appreciate you coming on. I enjoyed really digging into the project you're working on and the samples you've done. And I want to highly encourage anybody out there who's looking for something like this. You want to hire Jimmy, contact him directly. But again, Jimmy, thank you again for sharing all the posts on LinkedIn and also for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been a lot of fun talking about it, and yeah, I really appreciate you having me on.
Okay, and hold on, Jimmy. I'm gonna. I know that I've noticed that sometimes, if at the end of the show, LinkedIn is cutting off the end of the show, so I've actually put a post roll out. So I'm just gonna wish everybody good health and happiness. And until next time, my friends, peace. And let's see if we get this to work.